Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Diary of a Matchmaker. I'm Zaid, and on the other mic is my wife and co host Tiba.
Assalamu alaikum.
So, today we have a different guest. So, as you guys know, we typically interview Muslim experts. Today we have Monica Tanner. She's a relationship coach who works mainly with Christian couples. She is also the host of a podcast called Secrets of Happily Ever After. Her mission is to lower divorce rates and improve marital satisfaction. She also has an Amazon best-selling book called Bad Marriage Advice. Now, some of you may be wondering why we're interviewing a Christian coach. Today, we not only want to learn from Monica's experience and expertise, but hopefully learn how much our two faiths align also with regards to marriage and see where there may be some conflicts. So thank you for coming onto the podcast, Monica.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
We're so
Thank you.
excited to have you. Yeah, looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, so you shared a funny story with us, which I'd like to share with the listeners. My husband and I dated long distance for several months before I moved to where he was going to school so we could get engaged. I was so excited to meet his friends once I moved to Idaho. The first Sunday I was there, he brought me to church to meet everyone. Now, being from Texas, I was not used to walking on ice and snow. As we were approaching the building where all of his friends were waiting to meet for the first time, I slipped on the ice and fell down several stairs,
Wow.
crashing into the glass doors where his friends were on the other side of. My very first introduction to all of them was brushing myself off, assuring them that I was okay, and giving myself a 9 for gracefulness in navigating the icy stairway. We all had a good laugh together, and my husband has never let me walk down a flight of stairs without holding his hand in over 20 years. There were so many things that stood out about that story.
Sorry, we're laughing, by the way. It's hard not to.
Yeah.
Actually, what's so funny about that story is my husband holds my hand when we're on stairs together, but this morning he went to church early and I was coming and I wanted to wear these really cute, really high heels. And I looked so cute. And then I fell down the stairs in my
No.
garage. And
No
then
way.
No way.
knee open and had to go put band-aids on and change my clothes and definitely changed my shoes. So I was like, how appropriate that we're telling this story because I am not very
Wow.
good at that.
Wow, this is
No
uncanny.
excuse. I literally just fell down the stairs.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Are you okay?
Yes,
Okay.
but I do have a really funny picture of my bloody knee.
Oh my God.
I sent my daughter to church without me. I was like, go tell dad I fell down the stairs.
Oh, God.
By the way, were you actually okay when you fell down the stairs last time? Or
Oh yes. I'm very resilient,
Okay.
bounce back
Okay.
pretty quickly. I am getting older now. That was 25 years ago. So
Okay.
We're all getting older.
Yeah. I think one of the kind of takeaways from that story is that, like, probably when you think back 25 years or when you got married, is that you probably don't remember like the perfect flowers or the dress, or maybe you do, but one of the things that you probably remember so fondly is the funny, awkward moments, and that probably like kind of really mended and brought you two close together, right? And it's
Yeah.
not those perfectly curated moments that people always imagine when they're trying to plan their weddings and stuff.
Absolutely. I think that's true in all of life. I think the most memorable moments are the ones that go awry, the ones where you can just kind of smile at each other and be like, well, we're in this together, right? I have a huge appreciation for anyone who can find humor in the day-to-day of life.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So, if you had to say one sentence that would just really upset a lot of single people about their future marriage, what would it be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I would say stop trying to find the perfect spouse and start becoming the perfect spouse. So focus more on what you're doing and less on who's going to make you happy.
Okay, well, that immediately takes us to the next question, where a lot of people, they say, I am looking for the perfect spouse or for the person who completes me or whatever. But how often do you see that they are themselves, they wouldn't be a good spouse?
Yeah. It's interesting. It's not necessarily that they wouldn't themselves be a good spouse, but finding someone who completes you, that's actually one of the myths I talk about in my book. That's bad marriage advice, because the marriage is not about two incomplete people coming together to create a whole. I think that you have to have two strong individuals to create a strong marriage. And so, like I said, a lot of us are looking for, somebody who's going to make us feel good, and somebody who's going to tell us the things we want to hear, and somebody who's going to do things the way we do it. And more importantly than finding someone who's going to do that is focusing on how can we become a really whole and confident, complete human ourselves, with opinions and ideas that we feel are important, that we know how to care for ourselves, that we know how to fill our cups and make ourselves happy. And then we can choose to share our life and light with another complete whole human.
That's interesting, because that's one of the advice we always hear: find someone who completes you. And so what other common advice we hear being thrown out that are actually bad advice?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in that same vein, I think people think, oh, if you find the right person, they're just going to know what to do to make you happy or to be a good spouse, right? And the reality is we have to learn how to ask for and fight for the things that we think are important. Nobody can read your mind. Nobody does hints, especially right now we're around Valentine's Day, and I see all kinds of couples throwing out hints about what would be a good Valentine's celebration, right? And what I am preaching and always talking about is you have to learn how to ask for what you want, right? Like we as humans have to be able to give ourselves what we want and need, right? So if we need, somebody to be understanding or loving or forgiving, we have to be able to do that for ourselves first. But also in order to have a great marriage, you have to be able to articulate those things to your partner. You have to ask for support when you need it. You have to tell them what you're expecting around holidays and special occasions, and even in day-to-day life. Like, there is no one way to do relationships well. We all have different relationship blueprints. And so to be able to ask for the things that we want skillfully from our partners and teach them how to treat us is one of the absolute best skills, I think, that we can kind of hone in on before we get married.
Yeah.
I think
Go ahead, Eva.
No, I was just going to say, I think one of the problems is that we assume that the other person knows what we're thinking, knows what we want, knows what we need. And when they don't deliver, then we're disappointed.
Yeah. Well, not just that, but I feel like, and I'm definitely guilty of this, that when you reach a certain point in your marriage where you feel like, don't you get me by now? Like, don't you know how I like my breakfast? Don't you know what gifts make me happy and things like that? Like, you have to, there's this assumption that there should be this level of chemistry and understanding after a certain point. But that's, I guess, not necessarily the case.
It's not necessarily the case. And we're always changing our minds, right? And so, just assuming that somebody loves you enough to know how you like your breakfast, or you've been married long enough to know. I mean, that's just silly. You're going to end up disappointed time after time after time if you feel like, you want your spouse to be able to read your mind, and that's just kind of silly.
That's a good advice for people who are still searching and people who've been married for a while. So let's remember that, Zaid, for next time we argue about breakfast.
Sure. Sounds good.
Do you feel that some people hide behind the noble idea of self-improvement and self-work when they're actually afraid of commitment?
I mean, I think this is a really interesting principle, because I think unwittingly, without knowing, we actually do attract someone who's very evenly matched with us in terms of emotional intelligence. So we're kind of attracted, if we've really worked on ourselves and we know a lot about ourselves and our emotional regulation and being able to ask for the things that we need, we usually attract people that are at the same level as us. So if we're really still working on ourselves, we're probably going to find somebody who's kind of on the lower echelon of that. But if we've done a lot of work, and this is, I think, an important question to ask the person you're dating, is how do you feel about self-development, working on yourself? And it's good to find somebody who's evenly matched, that both of you want to continue to work on yourselves in the relationship together. So I think that's really important, to be aware of your partner's kind of ideas about self-development and growth.
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking about some of our clients. Like you would look at a specific client and you would think they have everything. They're ready, they're mature, they're financially ready, and all of that. But then every time we introduce someone, they find something. I don't know, saying, "Oh, I'm not ready. I need to be more established in my. I need the next promotion." So does it sound like being afraid of commitment or what?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very real for a lot of people. They kind of put off marriage. For me, I thought it was so valuable for my husband and I to figure out a lot of those things together, right? My husband, I had just graduated from college. He was still in college. And, I remember before I met him, I dated men who had it all together. They already had a house and an established job and all the things, and they just needed kind of a wife to complete the picture. But that wasn't appealing to me. I wanted to be able to work together in the trenches with somebody to establish ourselves together. So, I mean, I don't know. And of course, my parents were super alarmed about that. They were like, "Wait, you're still in college? You don't have a job or an income?" And my husband was like, "Nope."
Wow. Yeah, there's so much I can take from that, because it's a similar problem that we have within the Muslim community too, where there is, so Islamically speaking, it is the obligation upon the men to be able to provide food, shelter, clothing, basic maintenance, and things like that. But at the same time, it's not against Islamic principles for a woman to also help with that, right? To help with financial support and things like that. And yet we just sometimes take these principles and blow it out of proportion and create unrealistic expectations and almost burdens upon men to have a certain standard or to be able to provide a certain amount that is beyond what's required, Islamically speaking. So yeah, I definitely see a lot of that in the Muslim community.
Yeah. And just in my own personal experience, I loved being able to work while my husband was still going through school. And then when he graduated, we worked together to build our business for several years until I had too many kids and I was like, I can't do it anymore. Right. But we were very aligned on our values of hard work and, working together and being able to, we're very, very different in the way that we operate, right? And so our skill sets combined pretty well, but we had to learn to communicate, because I was very organized and like things done a certain way. And he was like, kind of fly by the seat of his pants and whatever. And so, it took a lot for us to be able to communicate, like, how are we going to work together and how are we going to utilize both of our strengths and compensate for our weaknesses together. And so it was good that we started a business together before we started having kids and all of that. So, yeah.
Very nice. Wow.
Yeah.
What is the one trait that people proudly list as a non-negotiable when it actually doesn't matter that much in marriage, that's like overrated?
Mm-hmm. That's interesting because I think compatibility is kind of a big misnomer when you're married. In fact, I'm just about to do a reel about Dave Ramsey, who's a huge personality. He talks about money, and I think that his content about money is great. But every once in a while, he steers over into the lane of marriage, and he's like, you should make sure that this is exactly what I want to talk about. You should make sure that you agree on money, children, what else? Religion and in-laws, I think, are the four things he said. You should agree on these things before you decide to get married. And if you do this, you'll make it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? First of all, my husband and I, he wanted 12 kids and I wanted 8 kids when we got married. And we ended up having 4. We completely disagree on everything that has to do with money. Our in-laws, you always think like, oh, no matter how perfect the family is that you're marrying into, there's always going to be drama with in-laws at some point in the marriage. And then religion, my husband and I come from extremely different religious values. So when we talk about or religious experiences, so when we talk about religion, we come at it from very different angles. And I think it's been such a blessing to our kids to have such different ideas and experiences and perspectives. So to me, I think people look for somebody who's a lot like them to marry. And I think more importantly is, can you find somebody that you can navigate your difference differences with, because
Right.
chances are you're going to marry somebody who's different than you. I mean, if you married somebody who was exactly like you, life would be very boring. First of all, it's going to be hard to find somebody who's exactly like you, because that's not real. And second of all, yeah, I feel like that would be so boring if you just agreed about everything. When I have a couple that they're like, they come in and they're like, we never fight. I'm like, one of you is lying. Because the reality is we are so different. And so learning how to navigate those differences, that's important. So make sure that you find somebody who's willing to, consider other perspectives, being able to talk through things, be curious about you, admit when they're mistaken about something. Those things are important, but agreeing on everything, I don't think that's important at all.
That's an interesting
Wow.
point, because it kind of reminds me of myself and Hiba. So on paper, and I say this to our clients every time we share our marriage story, that on paper we're not a very compatible couple. She's from the
Yeah.
Middle East. I grew up here. Her first language is not English. My first language is English, and the list goes on and on. And I feel like there's some similarities with you. You're in a different state. You have different religious experiences from your husband. Yet there, on paper, there's so many differences. Yeah, but how did you get to a point where you said, there's enough compatibility here for me to move forward and consider this person as a future husband? So where did you see that bridge exactly?
Yeah. Well, my husband and I talked a lot, and the majority of our relationship, like we talked about earlier, was long distance. So we used to talk on the phone for hours and hours and hours and hours. And what we learned about each other is that we had very similar goals, very similar values. We looked at things in a similar way. But you're right. On paper, we are so very different. And I think that is what makes our relationship fun and exciting and intimate, because we don't just make the same decision immediately, right? Like we have to talk about it. We have to dig into it.
Yeah.
That creates a lot of passion and fun. We get in big fights because we disagree about things, and we're both very passionate and independent. But that makes our repair even more important. And so I always talk about relationships are an endless cycle of harmony, disharmony, and repair. And the harmony is made better by the moments of disharmony when repair is made. So in those repair times is when trust is built. It's when intimacy is deepened. It's when the strength of your relationship is really tested. And so if you can repair well, then you come back stronger, and that harmony is even more beautiful, right? But you can't have that without disharmony, and disharmony comes when you disagree. So I think that, couples that are different from each other have so much to create together. It makes it so much more fun, because it's like I see the front of the elephant and you see the back of the elephant. And so if we can talk about what you're seeing and what I'm seeing and somehow come up together with the fact that we're looking at an elephant, that's so much more fun than like both of us are just looking at the butt of an elephant for our whole life.
That's a complete mindset shift, honestly. And I'm so happy you mentioned it, because like what we tell our clients is we use a slightly different terminology, saying you're not going to find somebody who like you're going to agree with on everything, but look for someone who you can tolerate and they can tolerate you. But I love what you said, someone you can navigate these differences with, because it already like sets the tone or the default that we are going to be different. So like, don't be surprised when these differences start to show, right?
And when you say tolerate, I love the word respect. Like my husband and I are very different, even on a Sunday, right? Like my husband wouldn't do an interview like this on a Sunday. Sundays are very rigid for him, right? But he respects the fact that I'm willing to do this. So it's like, and I respect the fact that he isn't, right? So if someone were to say, can I do an interview with you and your husband? My husband doesn't like to do that. And so I respect, we have a lot of respect for each other and our differences. And that's very, very important. In fact, this is so funny. I have some friends and they just did a reel on social media, and it was her teaching him how to put the pillows on the bed. So, she has decorative pillows for the bed. And so it's this cute little interaction between them. And she's like, do you know how I like the pillows on the bed? And he's like, no. And so he starts to, put the pillows on the bed. And she's like, now, why would you put that one there? And he just laughs and he goes, well, okay, is this one first? And so she's teaching him something that he would find very trivial. Men typically don't really care about the decorative pillows on the bed, but women do. It's a value for them to make things beautiful in that way, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I always say you should invite your partner into your bedroom and see how they handle, kind of the correction that it takes to learn how to put the pillows on the bed, and if they'll value that. And
Yeah.
I think that's a great litmus test for will they be a good partner, is are they going to tolerate or respect the fact that, putting the pillows on the bed is an important part of being married, and can you handle the correction in that?
I'm laughing because I'm remembering right now. Zaid, you probably forgot this, but so we've like you and your husband, we've courted for 40 months virtually. It was COVID, and then when I was able to come here, I came here, and Zaid was so proud of him that he was able to put the bed sheet on and the pillowcases and stuff the duvet and the duvet cover and stuff.
Yeah.
And I came and I'm like, what the hell is that? He had it all done wrong.
Yeah, I do remember this. Yeah.
And poor guy, he was so proud of himself.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And could
Yeah.
you handle the correction where you're like, this is actually how you do it, right? And he's like, oh, okay, sorry, and
Yeah,
learn
exactly.
how to do it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now it's one of
But
those things where just Hiba does it, and I'm just like, I stay out of it.
yeah, stay out of my way. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I really hope and wish every single person just internalize what you said about navigating the differences. Like what we see matching people a lot of times, we see how compatible they are in terms of values, but then
Yes.
they start talking, and in the first meeting, she says something he doesn't agree with, or he answers a question that she doesn't agree with, and immediately they conclude that no, this is a good match. Next.
Mhm.
And because they're coming to the relationship assuming that we have to be similar on every level. So that's a great reminder you had there.
Yeah, I want to dive deeper up into the topic of values, because people sometimes have this very abstract, vague conception of values. Like even when we take client calls, they say, "I want someone with religious values." Okay, well, that could look differently from one person to another, and yet people they haven't really taken the time to understand what deep down is one of their core values. So was that something was that like self-work that you did at some point, and you really had a solid understanding of what your core values were, and you used that as a guiding compass for when you were talking to your husband? Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, we spent so much time talking about how we envisioned our future, like how I envisioned my future and how he envisioned his future. And not that, we met in Texas, where I'm from, and he is from Idaho. And so he envisioned his future in Idaho, and I envisioned my future in Texas. So it was still different, but the things and we ended up raising our family in Idaho. So, and I'm so happy and grateful that we did. So of course we disagreed on things, but the things that felt really, really important, like we want to raise, a family. We want, we want to teach them hard work and how to contribute in the world, and we want to have our home be like an inviting place where our kids' friends can come. We want to serve in our community and in our church. Like those types of things, the way we envisioned our future aligned. But like I said, he wanted 12 kids. I wanted 8. And so it's not that it was exactly we agreed on everything, but it was like, we want a lot of children. We want to be able to raise these children. We want to enjoy our children. We both feel like sports were really integral in our growing up, and, want our kids to learn the lessons from working hard at sports or something that they feel passionate about. So, I mean, it's like a loose agreement, but you can feel in your heart the things that are really important. I knew that I wanted to be a really involved mother. I knew I wanted to be at the crossroads when my kids left for school and came home from school. I wanted to be there when they came home in the evenings after dates or whatever, to be able to talk to them. And I knew I wanted a man who felt similar, who wanted to be very involved in their kids' lives, who wanted to coach my kids' sports, who wanted to hang out with the teenagers, And so those things that felt really important, those things aligned. The other stuff, it's just details.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the difference in terms of how we, like Muslims versus Christians, go about the courting phase. So of course, it's common amongst Christians to date first. But in our faith, there is really no concept of dating. It's more like courting, right? Where when you're meeting the opposite gender, your intentions are clear from the get-go that the person you're meeting is for the purpose of marriage. And that everything is kind of built upon that. So the questions you're asking them, and then there's like very strict boundaries and stuff regarding premarital sex, whether it's holding hands and things like that. So I wanted to see how much is there overlap between our faiths when it comes to that, and where the differences are. So how did your process go about?
Yeah, well, I mean, some of my dating was, I was Jewish and then I converted to Christianity. So I have like a
Interesting.
wide perspective on it. But I think, as far as the way that we've raised our kids, to date, we value dating just for fun, especially in high school. We want our kids to date a lot of different types of people and do it in kind of group settings too. Like we really encourage them to date in groups and to date just lots of different boys, just to get an idea of how you treat people with respect, how you ask questions, to learn about people, just having fun. We don't want our kids to date like exclusively when they're so young, but get like in fact, my husband, when he was growing up, he had a rule that he couldn't go out on a date with the same person twice in a row. Like he was supposed to kind of vary it out so he could just get to know lots of different types of girls and what he liked. So I think that worked out well for him. My kids have kind of done all different things. But the idea is to court or date for the purpose of eventually getting married. Like it's all data and information for the type of person that you would want to spend your life with. And then as far as the physical kind of constraints of, no premarital sex and like different, we agree. I agree completely with you that I think it's really important to have some good kind of physical boundaries. And I think that talking about that early in your dating is so important because, to have somebody who respects kind of your comfort level and your decisions around all of that, I think is really important as well.
Yeah, clarity is the key from the beginning. Okay, interesting. And so a lot of people say that I will improve this certain quality after I get married. I'll become calmer, I'll become more patient, I'll become more confident. How delusional do you think this way of thinking is based on your coaching experience?
Very delusional. I say good luck with that. I think that we typically, when you're in close proximity with another person that sees all of your flaws, that see all of your humanness, it's very difficult, because you want to be a good partner, but that other person that you live with is very good at poking you where it hurts. And I think this is for a very good reason. It's because it's giving you the opportunity to heal those things, right? And so if you think that you're just going to, at the snap of a finger, be a better person around your spouse, I think that's very delusional. I think they're going to bring out the worst in you. Why? Because they're so important to you and they're going to expose all of those flaws.
Yeah, unfortunately, some people think the other way, that my spouse will actually heal me and fix me and make me a better human.
Yeah.
Yes, that goes back to those myths, those marriage myths that are just not right.
I'm curious to know, what are other common myths that we hear?
Well, that one I think is a really interesting one. I always hear, like, if you marry the right person, they'll never hurt you. And I think that's very delusional. I think that the person you marry is explicitly designed to hurt you in the ways that are going to give you the opportunity to heal, because your spouse won't heal you, but they will give you the opportunity to heal by kind of poking you where it hurts, exposing those wounds to you, and then hopefully they have more resources than your family of origin. So I feel like we were wounded in our early childhood relationships, and we're given the opportunity to heal in our relationships. In fact, I feel like the biggest gift that you can give your children is to heal that childhood wounding at some point, because I think no matter how perfect we are as parents, and a lot of us try really hard to be perfect, but no matter how perfect we are, we will wound our children somehow in some way. I think that's kind of the point of life. But to for them to know and understand and feel confident that they will be able to heal in their romantic marriage relationships is such a gift that we can give them.
Okay, it is good to enter marriage with this expectation rather than from the first fight just decide to break it off.
Oh, yeah.
my son who's 22, when he came and said, "Mom, I've met the girl I want to marry," I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, you're so young." But I also, my next question was, have you had a fight yet? Because I think it's so important to have a fight, to know how to disagree and how the other person is going to show up in that fight before you decide to get married. Like when I have couples that come for premarital counseling, I'll always say, "Tell me about your first fight." And because you want to know, is that person going to show up with humility? Are they going to be able to apologize? Are they going to be able to be curious about how you see things? Or are, what are their losing strategies? Do you know what they are? Do you know what you're dealing with? So I think it's really, really important to disagree and to fight before you decide to get married, because you just never know.
Zaid, did we fight before getting married?
Yeah, during our courting phase, I think we had a few disagreements here and there. Yeah.
No, but did we actually have a fight?
God, I can't remember. It was too long ago.
Are pretty close.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a knockdown, drag out fight.
Exactly.
But it's disagreement, right? Like, you a point of tension where you have different ideas about the same thing. It's important to be able to work through those, I think, and know how you both work through those things before you decide to spend your life together.
Yeah. Well, now I think we're experts. Like every other day we disagree on something.
Yeah.
That's good. That makes life kind of fun, right?
Yeah, it is. It is.
So what would you say is one way that people usually sabotage marriage before it even starts, like the common way, before, like without people even realizing it?
Ooh. I mean, demanding perfection, right? I know, because my kids are of marrying age, right? And so some of them are getting older and not marrying. And I think part of the reason is because they're looking for something so specific and they might not ever find it.
Yeah.
I think this is a problem with this generation, not just your kids. Like we see it every day with clients. Yeah. And it's hard to convince them that perfection doesn't exist. You yourself are not perfect.
Yeah.
They have to learn it the hard way.
Yeah. And not just perfection. I think the other problem is instant gratification. People are, and we see with our clients that they have this, as I call it, the Netflix mindset when it comes to choosing a spouse, right? We just want to binge our way through like 10 different people and just like say, okay, do you want kids? Do you want kids? Do you want kids? Do you want kids? And you're just like interrogating 10 people and not realizing that the person you're speaking to is a human being, right? And that there's much more than just a list of questions to understand about the person. So yeah.
Well, this brings, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, marriage is such a crucible for, learning and growing and becoming, right? Like you kind of, no matter when you get married, you're kind of growing up with this person, right? And so you are going from a very kind of rough form to, being able to fully develop into who you want to become. So it's important to really realize that you are such a huge part of, your partner's growth, right? And it's like being able to witness that, I think, is the beauty of a marriage and a relationship is, if I were to find the perfect person, then that would, again, I always say this, but it would be so boring. Like it would be boring to be married to somebody who's perfect, who always agreed with you.
Absolutely.
Really fast.
Absolutely. I think that's a mistake a lot of people make. Especially like what we see among single Muslims, they want someone that's ready, that's done it all, that's just arrived ready. And like you said, it's boring. You want someone to grow old with and experience different life experiences with. And I don't know, like it's going to be boring if they're already made it and they're already covered from A to Z. What's left, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But talking about perfection takes me to self-worth. So a lot of people say, I know my self-worth. And when do you think this turns into entitlement more than just self-awareness and self-confidence?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're in a relationship, the person that you're in relationship with is really important to you. And so knowing your impact or being able to take feedback about what your impact on them, that takes a lot of humility. So, I think if your self-worth is untouchable. I mean, nothing raises or lowers your worth as a human.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we don't impact each other in good and bad ways. And so, I think it is important to realize that I have worth, but it's no better or worse than yours. And so to walk around in life that way, especially with your partner, to recognize that we both have a lot of worth, but we also might be impacting each other in other ways. And I want to know, that doesn't mean it's easy to hear. Like, I want to know what my impact is on my partner. That doesn't mean when he says, oh, I'm volatile and emotional and, that doesn't mean it's easy to hear. But it does mean that I want to know what my impact is on him so that I can, change or grow or do better. And so yeah, but knowing your worth and, knowing that it doesn't change, even if you make lots and lots of mistakes or you have lots and lots of accomplishments, your worth doesn't change, and your worth is no better or worse than the person next to you.
That's
Beautiful.
interesting.
Yeah, you don't tie your worth to anyone, right?
Yeah, but then again, sometimes we've seen this where clients come in and they just think they are a 10 out of 10, or when they're really not. And they just have this unrealistic impression of themselves, and it's just really hard to kind of give them a reality check and say, you gotta bring yourself down a few notches.
I think life will probably give them a reality check they need at some point.
Yeah, too late sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Quick question for you: if someone listening had to just choose one uncomfortable area to work on before getting married, what is the one thing you think that they could improve upon to make their future marriage better?
Okay, so that would be, I would say, broadly, communication,
Right.
specifically listening with compassionate curiosity. I think that compassionate curiosity should always be our default. So no matter what situation we're in relationship, having compassionate curiosity for your partner's subjective reality, I think, is one of the most important things that we can do. So in order, I think, to have the best possible marriage or relationship, our goal should be a deep and abiding friendship. It's and everything that goes along with that. It's respect, it's love, it's empathy, compassion, all of those things. So if you want to really, in your dying breath, be like, we did this right, it's to really feel a deep sense of friendship with the person that you spent your life with. And I think the way that is accomplished is by having compassionate curiosity, not only for yourself, but for your partner, in the recognition that their experience is different than yours. I think couples have a big problems. I think very problematically is couples get into arguments about who's right or what is right, when the reality is who's right and who's wrong in any relationship is who cares.
Right.
Your experience is right and your partner's experience is right, and they will never match up. Sometimes people say, let's just agree to disagree. And I say, no. The point is not to agree. The point is to understand. And so if I could say, what is one thing that you could work on to make your life really amazing? It's learn how to listen for understanding, not to try and get another person to agree with you. You will be very disappointed and upset if you go through life trying to get other people to see it your way, do it your way, or agree with you. What really is of value is learning how to understand people that are different than you, that might see things differently or experience things differently, or already did experience things differently, right? Like, every time you have a conversation with somebody who is different than you and you learn how to understand and make room for these differences, you broaden your perspective. You see more of the elephant. Like I said, you don't want to spend your entire life looking at the butt of an elephant. It would be so much better if you got more perspective and understanding. You could see the majesty of the whole animal.
I think this requires great deal of discipline and not restrain. What's the word I'm looking for? Maybe just discipline, because like we as humans, we're programmed to immediately want to prove ourselves right, want to pass judgments. Exactly. So to listen just for the sake of listening and understanding and not seeking approval, that's something that needs practice. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for, practice.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, I think I need a moment to internalize that.
well, I like to think of things visually, and if you're always trying to get, the reality is people who don't seek for understanding from other people that are very stuck in their ways, they're probably looking at the butt of an elephant. And if they don't learn to listen and understand other people's point of view, they're probably going to spend their entire life just looking at the butt of an elephant and thinking that that's what an elephant looks like.
Yeah.
Now this imagery is going to be stuck with me for a while.
Right? You're going to start to meet people and you're going to be like, that guy is spending his entire life looking at the butt of an elephant.
Yeah, going along that same vein, I can see that, and we actually dedicate an episode to this too, that this typically happens with people who delay marriage. That when you cross a certain point, 30, 35, even 40, that you're just stuck in your ways. Your ability and your patience and willingness to broaden your perspective, to see things from a different lens, it really diminishes over time because you're just so set in doing things a certain way. And that's why marriage becomes harder the older you get, because it's just you just lost the ability to make room for that. So yeah,
so true.
And the people that give us the hardest time getting matched are our older clients typically. Yeah,
because they're so dedicated to staring at that butt.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh my god, do you work with only married couple or couples who are in the courting phase?
Both. I see a lot of couples. I love doing engagement and newlywed work. That's one of my favorite, because I think they're really setting themselves up for success when they prepare well for marriage. And I also work with a lot of single individuals who have had trouble. I don't know how familiar you are with attachment theory, but I work with individuals who feel like they have an anxious attachment to help them get into healthy relationships. I help them have a more secure attachment. So I work with clients all along the spectrum.
Wonderful. And what are some of the patterns you're seeing, especially if we're talking about people who are engaged to be married?
I think they're getting a lot smarter. I think they don't want to make the same mistakes that their parents made. I think a lot of people had parents who have divorced once, twice, multiple times. And so I think people are getting a lot smarter about marriage. They want to get started on the right foot. They know that honeymoon period at some point is going to end, and they want to be prepared. And so I think that these couples that come and get help before they get married are so courageous and so smart.
Yeah. We always encourage people to seek premarital counseling. It's not, we ourselves didn't go through it for, I don't know, Zaid, why didn't we?
We weren't aware that option was available. It wasn't as popular back then, or as far as I know, it wasn't as popular back then within the Muslim community, as popular as it is now.
Yeah, now we see it left and right, which is great.
People are wising up because in reality, I think everybody needs a good coach, counselor, somebody to help them see what they cannot see, right? And it's not that, I don't think of myself as this expert, like I'm so much smarter than anyone else. It's easy to see in others. It's easy to be able to point out. Like I always say, you can't see the label from the inside of the bottle. So to get a third perspective to kind of help you see what your impact is and where your weaknesses are is very helpful.
Beautiful. What is one advice you would give this one listener who's listening to us right now, who's been through so much, try to get to know so many people, and it's not working, and they're about to just give up the whole idea of marriage? What advice would you give them?
Well, I might say lower your standards.
And then to that.
I would just say, I mean, get in touch with your own humanity. To somebody who's really, really struggling, they probably have a very high ideal and they're probably not seeing their own humanity, right? Like, you're not perfect. And so, can you love somebody else who's imperfect, right? Like I always say, the best marriages is two imperfect people just striving to share life, right? And so, if there's a listener out there who's like, I've tried everything, I can't find the perfect partner, stop looking for the perfect partner and start like looking at yourself, what do you have to offer, and can you share your life with someone else?
This hits the nail on the right spot. But just before this interview, Zaid and I were recording this YouTube video where things we hear from our clients and we wish we could reply a certain way, but we wouldn't, because of courtesies and stuff. And one of them was like a client who would say something like, I'm looking for someone who's this height and like who looks this way and who has this certain job and who has these certain qualities, but I can't find them. What's the problem? So what we would like to say is, buddy, you're not that special.
Right. Yeah.
But we wouldn't.
Of course not.
But yeah, of course not. But yeah, that's a great advice. I think that, yeah. Zaid, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Nothing else. You are on social media, right? On Instagram, Facebook. Okay, if you don't mind sharing your handle. And
also, where can people find your book?
Yeah, so my book is just on Amazon. You can find, I have two books actually. One right now is really fun for Valentine's Day. It's called The Date Night Journal. And so it's a commitment to take your spouse on a date once a week, and then you can keep track of your love story one date at a time, is how I say. But then the Bad Marriage Advice is also, you just look up, my Bad Marriage Advice book is, must have given it away. Bad Marriage Advice is also available on Amazon. You can get them both there. And then I am on social media. Moni Talks Marriage is my Instagram handle. But you can find out everything about me, my podcast, my free resources, and how to work with me at monicatanner.com.
Okay. Wonderful. We will link to all of that. And I think I want to get that book, the date night thing. Maybe, Zaid, we should try that one.
Sure. Yeah, we can try that.
It's very, very, very simple. You make a bucket list of all the dates that sound fun. And then you go out on a date once a week and you just keep track of 3 things. So it's, what did you do on your date? What did you learn about your partner on your date? And what do you never want to forget about your date? And then at the end of the year, you can look back and see your whole year's worth of dates.
Oh, beautiful. Nice. Wonderful. That's a great idea. Well, thank you so much, Monica, for your time, for sharing. Really open our minds and perspectives to just new angles and new way to think about some things. I hope you guys, our listeners, enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. And thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Until next time.
Take care. Bye-bye until next time.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Okay.